Hi everybody, and welcome to my second video for REH Productions. If you by any chance have the first video that I did with REH, we spent a fair amount of time on basic things and evolved into a certain amount of more advanced harmonies, but this particular video is more for that purpose. We're going to try to take it a little bit further. Not just the traditional blues, but bring in some new harmonies that you may not be familiar with, and show you ways to play blues but with some more interesting chord forms. So I hope you learned something from it, and here we go. Here's an A. What we're going to do here is a traditional 12-bar blues, basically a G7 12-bar blues with what's known as a rumba feel to it. Something I've always liked, this particular groove. So here we go, and then we'll come back and talk about the scales and chords used. The chords we're using in this particular blues are G7, C7, and D7. Those are very simple chord forms, and I'm using a lot of other voicings while we're playing this thing. But in any case, those are the fundamentals. And the scales that are used, that I'm using on this particular thing, are the traditional, what's known as Mixolydian mode. Which also happens to be the C major scale, starting on the 5th degree. Another scale that I like to use a lot is the minor pentatonic, but we replace the 7th degree, which is F. There's the F. We replace it with the 6th degree, which is E natural. And also there's the traditional blues scale, which is, I think, basically the minor pentatonic scale, adding the flatted 5th as well. Flatted 5th. So that's the basic thing, and all these things sort of weave in and out together. So you wind up with a combination of quite a few different elements. And the key to making them all sound right is to realize the relationship of each of these notes in relationship to the chord that's being played in the blues at that particular time. So that's real important. Your ear is going to be the guiding factor with all these scales and chords. So the scales that we're using over the G7 chord can be transferred to the D7 chord, and obviously you're in a new key now. I'm talking about these same shapes. Now you can play them on the D. And pentatonic with the 6th and the flatted 5th. All sounds good. But on the C7 chord, if you try to play the minor blues thing, pentatonic scale against that C7, it just starts to sound a little funny. Largely because of that D flat. It just has kind of a sour sound to the ear. And I think that's because, really, with the blues, you pretty much stay within the context of your G7 chord. And this major third, that's the one note you really need to watch out for on the C chord. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate first these 3 scales again, just over a G7 vamp, so you can hear them in context. Take it. First, I'll play the Mixolydian. Now here's the minor pentatonic. And now we'll add the flatted 5th and the dominant 7th, the minor pentatonic with flatted 5th. So now we're going to play the blues and use these scales all together. And we're going to pause on the 5 chord, the D7, hold that a little bit longer so that I can play through, more obviously play through the scales and show you that they all do work on the 5 chord. And then just a bar on the C7, and again I'll avoid some of the usage of those scales there. And then back to the beginning. Okay? Now we're going to do the 12-bar rumba blues, and I'm going to play some chords and see if I can give you a few choices that maybe you didn't have before. Hit it. 1, 2, 3. This next piece of music is a composition by great keyboard player Russell Ferrante. He's the keyboard player with a band called the Yellow Jackets that I worked with in the early 80s. And it's basically a gospel kind of a feel, and the chord changes are also gospel-oriented, but he did a lot to dress the tune up. So there are a lot of classic 1-6-2-5 changes in it, and a few tricks of his own to make the thing a little more interesting. The thing I like about the song, and the thing I like about playing the song, is that you can basically play a straight blues style right through the thing and not even worry too much about making the changes. But the changes are there if you want to make them as well. So listen to this for a minute. Now this song we cut on my first Warner Brothers record, Talk to Your Daughter was the name of the album. The song's called Revelation. And when we recorded it there, I didn't play any chords on it. I basically approached it as a saxophone player would. I just played melodies, soloed. And I really grew up playing that way a lot. I always liked saxophone players, and I probably didn't even know the chords to the song when we cut it, you know. I learned to play it by ear, and so I'll do my best to demonstrate the chords for you that I can. Okay, now the first 8 bars of this song are pretty much what we call diatonic, which means it stays within the one particular scale. In this case, there are G scale, G7 scale. Except there's one point where it takes a little twist, which which is around the 4th bar. It goes to a B7. So we'll play the first 8 bars for you just a couple of times. 1, 2, 3. C, B7. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed that, but when we came to the B7, I quite deliberately played right out of the B7 chord. Basically, there are 2 scales that I like to play against that B7 chord. One is the Mixolydian mode in B7. And also it's actually the C diminished scale, but we're starting on the last degree of that scale, which would be B. There's the C. So it's a series of half steps and whole steps, starting from B. Half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, ad infinitum. So that one in particular sounds real hip. I'll try to play it right now against that B7. 2, 3, 4. One more time. Now the bridge, or the B section to this particular song, has a series of chords which, again, although they have a real natural flow and you can really kind of keep within the blues in playing to it, they have a couple of key points, like the first part of the tune, like that B7 was just a little shift in the tonality. So I'll try to illustrate it a little bit here. The end of it, the end of the A part, getting into the next part, starts C over D, E flat diminished to E minor 7. Now we have C minor 6, major 7, D minor 7, basically D flat 9, flat 5, C, and then a 1-6, there's the 6, 2-5 to G7. The chord that I showed you a moment ago, second chord after the E minor 7, this is the one where the tonality changes, shifts a little bit. You really have to get a little bit outside of the blues, straight blues scale here. Now, this chord can be interpreted a couple of different ways. One as a B, raise 9, raise 5 chord, or another as C minor 6, major 7 with the third in the root. And the scale that is played over this, and I hope this isn't confusing, but it is a C melodic minor scale, once again starting on the last degree of the scale, which is B. That's the scale. So we'll play it starting on the E minor 7 for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you might have noticed a couple of chords right after the E minor 7 and the B altered here, which is basically a 2-5 to C, D minor, C sharp 7 flat 5, or G7 with C sharp in the bass to C. Very useful scale on any 2-5-1. D minor, G7, C major. D is the D melodic minor. Goes nicely to C, you can hear that. So we'll play that part again and see if you can hear that in there. The bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4. So sonically, the chords to the chorus are not that much different from the bridge, except perhaps one chord. So you have this, and right here is a D sharp diminished going to E minor, and then we have that C minor, major 6, major 7, or B altered chord once again, with a third in the root. And the rest of it is basically the G major scale. Now the scale for the D sharp diminished chord here is as follows. And I have a habit of adding an extra note to it, adding a D natural. And you can see it seems to come out of a B tonality, right? It's D sharp diminished. But it's sort of like B altered with the third in the root. So we'll play a little bit of this again, and the chorus of the tune here, and I'll play through that a little bit. 1, 2. So I hope that gives you some idea of what's going on with this particular tune. I'd really play this song by ear, always have, and just, you know, that's kind of the key, to keep your ear open to the chords as they go by. And the more you play with the tune, the more you get to know it and find the notes in the right places. But those are some key points in this thing. So we're going to play a little bit more for you, just to sort of tie it all together. Okay, right from the melody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this diminished scale, the half-step, whole-step scale, I'll show it to you once again here in G. Is excellent to be used as a passing scale to get from a G7 to a C7 chord. So from your 1 chord to your 4 chord, which is the second chord in your blues. So we're going to play a little vamp here just between G7 and C7, and I'll show you how I use it to get from one chord to the other. The next piece of music we're going to do is a song called I Ain't Got Nothing But the Blues. It's also from my Warner Brothers record, and it was written by Duke Ellington, and I heard it years ago played live by a great blues artist named Mose Allison, jazz and blues artist, and my arrangement of it is very much taken from his, but we made it a little bit more darker kind of blues, as opposed to a kind of a light swing, which he used. Gary Willis is playing bass with me on this, and here we go. I'll play the thing for you and then come back and show you the chords and some of the ideas as well, the chordal and melodic ideas. Now I'm going to just go through the chords for you so you can get a better idea of how the song actually goes. Here we go. So I'm going to play a few choruses of this particular piece, and the main idea here being to demonstrate some of the chordal possibilities, chord voicings, and little melodic ideas that you might be able to use in a piece like this. So here we go. The chords here are in many ways similar to what you heard in Revelation. They're standard kind of blues, somewhat gospel-oriented chords. And again, there's just a couple of key places where you really hear a tonal change. And right off the bat, after the opening three chords, you have this A minor 7, D raised 9 to G minor, C13 flat 5, C diminished, or B flat diminished, excuse me. That walk up was also used in Revelation. So again, you can play blues against this opening. Now you get here, and you have a couple of options. And there are a couple of scales you can use against this. One is the half diminished half whole tone, which is also known as the E flat melodic minor, starting on D, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D. So it's half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. Also, you can use the G harmonic minor, which goes like this. Starts on F sharp. Well, I'm starting on F sharp because the D is our root here. So the chord following that, C9 flat 5, you can use G melodic minor. Which is, I'll spell it for you, starting on G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And this will apply to both the G chord and the C flat 5. Now we're going to take these four chords out of the tune and just play them over and over again for you so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, now the bridge of the song, after this walk up, changes keys to D. Now we're back to this part. Now on this bridge section, the first two bars of it leading up to the G chord Basically, it's all D. It's a little walking thing. Right here, it hits diminished chord and resolves once again to D. And that basically being diminished, the essential elements to the diminished scale are a series of minor third intervals. So in this case you have D, F, G sharp, B, and D. So we'll play this little part for you here, and I'll fool around with that diminished thing. We'll play it over and over a few times. 2, 3. The thread that kind of runs through my playing and even the kind of songs that I pick is playing something that has that element of harmonic sophistication to it. You know, you've got some altered chords and some different scales that you can use against them. That sort of retains the interest ear-wise to the blues for me. I love traditional blues, and at the same time I love putting it together with this sort of sophisticated harmony. And it's nice, you know, to have that kind of thing under your belt, that harmonic knowledge under your belt, and still have the funkiness of the blues in there. So again, it's sort of a key thing to my music and the kind of music I look to play, kind of tunes I look for and write, have that element where blues and jazz harmony can sort of cross over, and you almost can't tell which is which in a way, but they go together really well. I spent a little time working with Miles Davis a couple of years ago, and there's a certain kind of harmony that runs through his music and has for many years. I had picked up on it kind of ear-wise, and I found that basically there was a lot of usage of the diminished scale, that half-step, whole-step scale we talked about earlier. Now, Gary Willis and I are going to play something that's very much out of the kind of groove and harmonic place that Miles is coming from, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Now you may have noticed this. Might have looked kind of funny to you, because it is kind of funny. I was shown this after I started working with Miles by the keyboard player in the group, and discovered something about his harmony that had always sort of mystified me. Basically, it is 12-tone. You can use all 12 tones. Now, that means on a guitar, for instance, all the way from E to the octave. And all these notes are good at some point or other, depending on how you use them. And there's a particular little way that he moves chords that gives you all those notes and still creates a certain sense of melody in there. And I'll show that to you right now. It's based upon triads and fourths. Now, what we're going to do here, this tune is in F, what you just heard. We're going to start with a triad. Now, basically, this is just like those 3 strings on your guitar, up an octave and a step higher. So the notes are D sharp, G sharp, and C, or B sharp. Now, what we're going to do is move the bottom 2 notes down a half step and leave the top note on top, like that. I hope that's clear. I use my little finger. Now you move this down, the top note in particular is your guide, so you move this down the pentatonic scale, basically this being the 5th degree of the pentatonic scale in F. Now you go down a whole step, do the same little thing. Down a whole step, down a minor 3rd. Now you've played all 5 tones of the pentatonic scale using this movement below it. And that can keep going. Okay? The scale that I like to use a lot, particularly in playing out, is that, once again, that diminished scale. That and all the other blues scales that we talked about a little bit earlier. Mixolydian, the pentatonic, this diminished scale, the pentatonic scale replaced by the 6th instead of the 7th. And all these things kind of just go together. And it's really up to your ear to be your guide in terms of making musical sense out of it. But for some reason, that little harmonic technique that I just showed you creates a large harmonic playground. You know, you can play just about anything over that. So we'll play a little bit of it for you, and I'll be combining all the elements that we've talked about before, all the scales that we talked about before, all the blues flavored things, as well as this diminished situation as well. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you've learned something from all of this. We've covered a good deal of ground, and I hope you've learned some new things about chords and scales, and particularly with their relationship to the blues. I'd like to thank my friends Don Mock, Gary Willis for playing bass, Dave Hill for accompanying me on guitar and doing a lot of other work for this video, and the crew. And we're going to take it out here with a little bit of Down Home Blues.